Welcome back to Narrations. Thanksgiving is a time for family, for gathering, forgiving, and sometimes, enduring. It's about long drives, warm meals, and learning that connection isn't always easy. But sometimes, the road home teaches you more than the destination ever could. This is Dutch, 1991, a funny, touching story about one man, one spoiled kid, and one unforgettable Thanksgiving journey. It begins with Dutch Dooley, a blue-collar guy with a rough edge but a good heart. He's a self-made man, blunt and unpolished, the kind of guy who works hard, jokes loud, and believes in doing right by people, even if he doesn't always say it gracefully. Dutch is dating Natalie Standish, a kind and elegant woman from a much wealthier world. She's recently divorced, trying to co-parent with her ex-husband Reed, a wealthy, arrogant man who left her for someone else but still looks down on her new relationship. Thanksgiving is coming, and Natalie's biggest wish is simple: to have her 13-year-old son, Doyle, home for the holiday. Doyle lives with Reed, attending a fancy prep school far away. He hasn't forgiven his mother for the divorce and refuses to visit. He idolizes his father, the man who abandoned them, and sees his mother's boyfriend Dutch as an embarrassment. Natalie, heartbroken, explains the situation to Dutch. She tells him that Doyle refuses to come home for Thanksgiving, that Reed is too busy to drive him, and that she can't bear another year without her son at the table. Dutch grins and says, "Don't worry about it. I'll go get him." Natalie hesitates. Dutch is rough around the edges, not exactly the type to charm an upper-class boarding school. But he insists. "It'll be fine. I'll pick him up, we'll bond a little, and I'll have him home before the turkey's carved." Famous last words. Dutch drives his old beat-up car through the night, excited to surprise Doyle. In his mind, this will be easy, maybe even fun. A road trip with a kid, some jokes, some snacks, maybe a little tough love. He imagines Doyle as shy, maybe a bit quiet. But what he finds is something else entirely. When he arrives at the fancy private school, Dutch meets a cold, smug, perfectly dressed young man. Doyle greets him with suspicion, eyes narrow, voice dripping with disdain. He refuses to shake Dutch's hand. He refuses to pack his things. Dutch tries to lighten the mood. He cracks jokes, offers to carry his bags, even tries to brag a little about the fun road trip ahead. But Doyle isn't buying it. To him, Dutch is an intruder, a man who doesn't belong in his world, trying to replace his father. When Dutch mentions Natalie, Doyle's face hardens. "She left my father," he says, his voice icy. Dutch corrects him gently. "Your old man left her." But Doyle doesn't believe it. He's been living in Reed's world too long, the kind where money equals truth. Dutch sighs. "Okay, kid, let's make a deal. You can come with me quietly, or I can drag you out kicking and screaming." Doyle smirks, thinking he's bluffing. Dutch smiles back, and proceeds to toss Doyle over his shoulder and march him out the door. It's not the ideal start to a bonding trip. The car ride begins in silence. Dutch tries everything: jokes, music, stories, but Doyle stares out the window, stone-faced, offering nothing but sarcasm. He calls Dutch a clown. He mocks his clothes, his car, his job. Dutch takes it in stride, at least at first. As miles roll by, the tension builds. Doyle refuses to eat the gas station snacks Dutch offers. He complains about everything: the noise, the smell, even the way Dutch drives. Dutch, still patient, decides the only way to deal with arrogance is humor. He starts teasing the boy, exaggerating his blue-collar background, making fun of Doyle's fancy manners. The banter becomes sharper, funnier, and for a moment, you can see the tiniest crack in Doyle's armor. But it doesn't last long. When they stop at a motel for the night, Doyle locks Dutch out of the room. Dutch, shivering in the cold, sleeps in the car, until he finally snaps, kicks the door open, and teaches Doyle a lesson in humility the hard way. "You might think you're better than me," Dutch says, "but you're not better than anyone. You just haven't learned it yet." It's not cruelty. It's honesty. The next morning, Dutch wakes up in better spirits. He cooks breakfast on a small hot plate, determined to start over. Doyle, still sulking, watches quietly as Dutch whistles and makes jokes about the world's worst road trip. There's something in his resilience, his ability to laugh through anything, that slowly begins to break Doyle's resistance. But the road has other plans. A tire blows out. Their car breaks down. Their wallets are stolen at a rest stop. And just like that, Dutch and Doyle are stranded in the middle of nowhere with no money, no car, and no patience left. They start walking. Through the rain, through empty highways, through truck stops filled with strangers. They fight. They insult each other. They even threaten to part ways more than once. But when the night gets colder and the miles get longer, they have no choice but to rely on each other. Dutch gives Doyle his coat. Doyle pretends not to care. But later, when Dutch is asleep, the boy quietly drapes it back over him. A small, silent act of kindness, the first sign that maybe he's beginning to see the man beneath the rough edges. As they keep moving, Dutch tells stories about his life, growing up poor, working his way up, learning to survive. Doyle listens, trying not to show interest, but something about Dutch's grit strikes him. For the first time, he realizes that strength doesn't come from money, it comes from endurance, humor, and heart. At a diner, they share their first real meal together, cheap coffee, greasy eggs, and a sense of uneasy truce. Doyle even laughs at one of Dutch's jokes, pretending it wasn't funny right after. By now, the road trip has turned into something unexpected, not just a mission to get home, but a journey through the space between two worlds, wealth and work, pride and humility, father and son. And though neither of them will admit it yet, they're starting to care about each other. But the biggest test still lies ahead, because before they make it home for Thanksgiving, both Dutch and Doyle will have to face who they really are, and who they want to be to each other. The road stretches endlessly before them, long, cold, and somehow beautiful. Dutch and Doyle are running on fumes, a couple of mismatched travelers stumbling their way toward Thanksgiving. They've shared meals, miles, and a few too many arguments. But beneath all the teasing and temper, something is changing, not in the road ahead, but in the quiet space between them. Dutch has stopped trying to win Doyle over. He's just being himself now, honest, stubborn, and strangely kind. Doyle, for the first time, is starting to see it. Maybe this man isn't just some loud-mouthed clown. Maybe he's something his father never was, real. They managed to hitch a ride with a pair of truckers, who dropped them off halfway home. It's cold, and they're filthy, broke, and exhausted. Dutch jokes that this is the luxury route, first class, with free frostbite. Doyle rolls his eyes but smiles faintly. That small smile says more than words ever could. They stop at a homeless shelter for warmth. Dutch cracks jokes with everyone, offering to wash dishes for food. Doyle sits quietly, watching. He's never been in a place like this, surrounded by people who've lost everything but still share what little they have. When a stranger offers him half a sandwich, Doyle hesitates, then accepts. Something shifts in his eyes, humility, gratitude, maybe even understanding. That night, as they sit near a fire behind the shelter, Dutch tells Doyle about his own childhood. About growing up poor, about working through every holiday, about never having much but always having heart. You know, Dutch says softly, you can't buy dignity, kid. You earn it by how you treat people. Doyle doesn't answer, but when he looks at Dutch, there's no anger in his face, only quiet respect. The next morning, they start walking again, bundled in borrowed coats. It's Thanksgiving Day. The snow has started falling. They're still miles away from Natalie's house, but Dutch refuses to give up. We'll get there, he says. We'll just do it one step at a time. Then, as if the world finally decides they've suffered enough, a small miracle, a ride. A kind couple picks them up, laughing at their story. The woman hands Doyle a cookie. The man says, Thanksgiving's no good unless you're sharing it. Doyle smiles shyly. Hours later, as they reach the city outskirts, Dutch insists on one last stop, a cheap roadside motel to clean up. Doyle looks in the mirror and hardly recognizes himself, not because of the dirt or the bruises, but because he sees someone softer, stronger, and more alive than before. When they finally arrive at Natalie's house, it's dark outside but warm inside, candles glowing, the smell of turkey filling the air. Natalie opens the door and gasps, rushing to hug her son. Doyle stiffens at first, then slowly melts into her arms. It's not perfect, but it's real. Dutch stands behind them, grinning. "Told you I'd deliver him," he says. Natalie laughs through tears. "You look terrible." Dutch winks. "You should see the kid." Dinner begins awkwardly. After all, Doyle hasn't been home in months. But soon the warmth returns. They eat, they talk, and the silence between them finally breaks. Doyle apologizes to his mother, not with a speech, but with a few honest words. "I miss you." Later, Dutch sits quietly in the corner, watching them. He's tired, bruised, his clothes still muddy, but there's peace in his eyes. He did what he came to do. Then the doorbell rings. Reed, Doyle's father, has arrived uninvited, dressed perfectly, smiling like he owns the room. He greets Natalie politely, ignores Dutch completely, and turns to his son with a confident grin. "Hey, champ. Ready to go?" But Doyle hesitates. Reed assumes he'll come without question, but Doyle looks back at his mother, at the home, the table, the warmth. Then, for the first time, he says no. "I'm staying here." Reed's smile fades. "Don't be ridiculous." Dutch stands up, calm but firm. "You heard him." Reed glares, ready to fight, but Doyle steps between them. "He's right, Dad. You don't have to like him." "But I do." It's a small sentence, but it carries years of silence, resentment, and love all rolled into one. Reed doesn't know how to respond. He just stares at his son, realizing that the boy he tried to mold now belongs to his own choices. He leaves without another word. The door closes softly. Natalie exhales, her eyes shining with pride. Dutch claps Doyle gently on the shoulder. "You did good, kid." Doyle looks at him and says, "So did you." Dutch. It's the first time he's used his name without an insult. The moment lands heavy and sweet, like the sound of laughter after a storm. Dinner resumes. Natalie insists Dutch sit at the table with them. He jokes about having earned his stuffing. Everyone laughs. Doyle even teases him back, calling him the worst driver in America. Dutch pretends to be offended, but the smile on his face says it all. As the night winds down, Doyle sneaks into the kitchen to help Natalie with dishes, something he's never done before. She watches him quietly, tears in her eyes, knowing that something changed on that long road home. When they finish, Dutch and Doyle step outside for some fresh air. The snow falls gently, glowing under the porch light. "You know," Dutch says, "if you ever run away again, call me first. I charge half price for rescues." Doyle laughs. "Next time, I'm driving." They stand in silence for a while, watching the snow. The world feels still, peaceful. Two people who couldn't stand each other a week ago now share something unbreakable, a bond built not on blood, but on the miles between hearts learning to understand each other. Inside, the fireplace crackles. Natalie hums softly, setting out dessert. The air smells like pie and forgiveness. Thanksgiving isn't perfect. Families argue, plans fall apart, and life gets messy. But Dutch reminds us that the real meaning of the holiday isn't the meal or the traditions, it's the road that leads us back to each other, no matter how long or hard it gets. As the credits roll, Dutch leans back in his chair, smiling as Doyle passes him a slice of pie. "Now this," Dutch says, "is what I call dinner." And for the first time, Doyle smiles back. "Yeah. It's pretty wonderful. Because sometimes, the toughest journeys lead to the warmest homes." And that was Dutch, 1991, a Thanksgiving story about patience, pride, and finding family in the most unexpected places. If you enjoyed this narration, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Narrations, where stories are served warm, one heartfelt movie at a time.